Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of Draft Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Alan Saunders, joined once again by Nick Farabaugh of SteelersNow.com. And it is the final episode of Draft Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live for the 2021 season because tomorrow is the NFL Draft. And, of course, we'll be live with myself, Nick, Cale Berger, and Mike Osti during the draft tomorrow night. The only place where you can get your live draft coverage from a Steelers perspective. So make sure you come check it out right here on the YouTube platform. Click subscribe, check the bell for notifications so you get an alert as soon as we go live tomorrow night, right around 8 o'clock. And of course, the Steelers pick at number 24 will happen probably closer to 11 o'clock. So if you don't tune in for the whole time, tune in certainly for us so that you can hear myself and Nick break down the Steelers selection live as it happens. And we're going to wrap up our draft preview by, we're going to talk about some news and some other stuff too, but mostly we're going to talk about the idea that some teams behind the Steelers in the first round could be looking to trade up. We've seen it reported that the Buffalo Bills, the Green Bay Packers, and the New Orleans Saints are all looking to move up from their spots in the final 10 picks of the first round. And that could mean a couple different things for the Steelers. It could mean that one of those teams could move up ahead of the Steelers and greatly influence who's there on the board when the Steelers pick at 24. It could also mean that the Steelers are the team they're trading up with, and Pittsburgh could move back into the end of the first round, a scenario that we heard general manager Kevin Colbert break down in pretty solid detail during his press conference on Monday. So something that seems to be an option for the Steelers if they don't like the board the way it falls to them at 24. So, Nick, I guess first of all, let's talk about the idea of these teams jumping ahead of Pittsburgh. Now, it was reported that the Bills are looking for Clemson running back Travis Etienne, and the Saints are looking at Virginia Tech cornerback Caleb Farley. While I didn't see a specific player tied to the Packers, but are in any of these teams moving ahead of the Steelers? Does that change what we talked about yesterday, the way we see this draft breaking down and who we think will be available when they take to the podium at number 24?
Well, Farley, if he comes off board, definitely decreases the likelihood of corner. So that is something. Not that Farley, I think, is a likely pick in round one. I think the medical issues are pretty darn. We saw that earlier this week, that a lot of teams feel like he could drop to the second round, right? I mean, so it's possible for me that they wouldn't even take him there, but that's something that could definitely affect them. I don't think the Packers affect them too much. The report apparently is that they're coming up for Bateman, Rashad Bateman, wide receiver. I don't think that affects Steelers at all. I don't think they're going to touch receiver this early. In fact, I think that's one of the better scenarios for the Steelers, trading back 5 spots. And at that point, I mean, you trade back 5 spots, you could probably do that for, if Najee Harris is there at 24, you could probably trade back 5 spots and still get Najee Harris at 29. So, like, that's would be okay. Now, the Bills, obviously, that does affect the Steelers. Coming up for Travis Etienne takes one of the running back options off the board, and it's even worse if Najee Harris is off the board. So if Najee Harris goes off the board at 18 to the Dolphins or 23 to the Jets, and then Etienne comes off the board, I think you can essentially eliminate running back at 24 at that point. I just can't see them taking a running back. So that's the way I think those affect them. Now, I will say this. I also think that it depends on who trades back. We've seen that the Saints maybe want to get up above the Titans. So maybe that means the Colts. And if the Colts trade back, that means one less tackle needy team that high. So maybe a tackle could fall to the Steelers as a result of that. If the Jets get out of there at 23, maybe they trade back with the Bills. I know that's an interdivision rivalry thing, but maybe they do trade back with the Bills. And that takes another running back team out of the equation, probably leaves one of the running backs there if Miami doesn't take one, and it opens the door for another contender out of the JOK sweepstakes. So, it kind of depends on who trades back, but I think the biggest one to watch is the Bills.
And then let's talk about the idea that the Steelers could be the team that these teams would be trading back to. If the Steelers want to trade back into the first and stay in the first round, there's only a handful of picks there with the Steelers at 24. and 3 of them are divisional opponents. Now, Kevin Colbert said he would prefer not to trade back with a team in the division, leaving 26 Cleveland, 27 Baltimore, and 31 Baltimore seemingly off the board. Don't think it seems to make a lot of sense to move back one spot to Jacksonville at 25. That leaves the Saints at 28, the Packers at 29, the Bills at 30, and maybe Tampa Bay at 32 is the only realistic options if the Steelers are going to stay in the first round. We've talked a lot about trading down making sense for the Steelers, but does a trade with one of those teams seem to make sense to you, where those teams are going to be able to get that player that they're looking for by coming up to 24 to trade with the Steelers?
Yeah, it's possible. And I think the team to watch is not so much the Bills. I think the Bills could be pretty confident if they get past the Jets. I think they can be pretty confident that Etienne's either going to become a Pittsburgh Steeler or he'll be there at 30. I don't see any team between the Steelers and the Bills that will take Travis Etienne. I think the biggest
threat. So if they really want him, maybe the Steelers are the team they need to trade up with, right? If the Steelers aren't super high on Etienne themselves.
Maybe that's what they need to do. They need to give up a 3rd round pick to maybe pull Etienne away from the Steelers, get Etienne. But I would think coming up for Etienne would mean with trade with like the Colts or the Titans or someone,
or at least the Jets, because I think they seem likely to be a running back team as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And it depends on whether or not Harris is on the board, right? Because if Harris is on the board, maybe they can feel a little bit more comfortable sitting back at 30. If Harris is already gone, maybe they need to move up a little bit more aggressively. What about a corner where, I'm not sure where the corner market is going to be. I expect, both Surtain and Horn to be long gone by the time we're talking about this area of the draft, but Newsome should be available somewhere there in the early 20s. If Green Bay really likes Farley, where do they have to go? Is 24? If New Orleans really likes Farley, does 24 does that get them that player?
I mean, I think it would. I think the Titans are going to go receiver. That's my feel. I think I'm kind of starting to feel either Bateman or personally, I think maybe Elijah Moore is an option there. So if they really wanted to get Farley, I think they could get him at 24. Now, the question is, the Steelers trading back 4 spots, what would that net them? Would they get the 3rd, or would they have to settle for a 4th? And like New Orleans coming up for Farley, they all they really have to do is ensure they get in front of Cleveland, because Cleveland's a corner needy team. And if they can get in front of Cleveland, they can get Farley. Pretty much no questions asked. So, would the Steelers get another potential top 100 pick from that trade? I mean, I don't know. It's a very big question to me. If that trade is even
worth. Have both their 3rd round pick at 98 and a 3rd round compensatory pick at 105.
That might be what it would be.
I mean, so trading 98, not really that big of a deal if you have another pick, 7 picks later.
Yeah, so I mean, they could trade 105 or 98, depending. I think the Steelers would obviously prefer the higher one, but if they could get 105, I don't think that would be an issue either. I mean, that nets the Steelers another potential starter if that happens. Yeah, I mean, and that's a good way to screw Cleveland over too. I mean, just take away one of their potential targets. So nothing bad going on that.
Yeah, I think that is the one that makes a lot of sense. And then the last of these 3 that we've mentioned, Green Bay, they're sitting there at 29. If it's really Rashad Bateman they want, I agree with you. I think they've got to at least get ahead of the Titans and maybe the Colts at 21. The Bears seem to have bigger needs. To me, I think that one feels the least likely as far as teams trading up with the Steelers. If it's Bateman thereafter, the Packers just seem to like to trade up in general. They traded up to get Jordan Love last year, and they also have very few needs as a team. They bring back almost everyone, so they're a team that really probably doesn't need all the draft picks they have. So trading up in general looks pretty attractive to them.
Well, Brian Gutekunst has traded up in the first round each of his first 3 years in the NFL. It literally every year. I think he did for what Darnell Savage as well. So did he move up for Gary? I don't think he moved up for Gary. I can't remember, but he moved up all 3 years. I know that. So he's a guy that has done it before. And I'll say this: I think let's say Bateman does get past the Titans and they take Elijah Moore. And then the Colts take a tackle, whatever. So Bateman is there. He's there when the Steelers are on the clock at 24. At that point, and the Packers are obviously still there. They haven't traded up. I think that's when you can talk about, well, this is very possible because, again, there are two teams right behind the Steelers, the Browns and the Ravens, who need, and also the Saints. The Saints need a receiver too.
And
all three
the Jaguars
teams,
too. Really, all
exactly. So every single team behind the Steelers, 229, needs a receiver, and it's a good probability. I think Cleveland would take Bateman if he was there. I think they would. They need another weapon. They have to. They saw what happened when Odell went down last year. Their receivers just didn't cut. And then obviously the Ravens badly need a receiver. It's just Hollywood Brown pretty much in that room. I mean, they have Sammy Watkins, but he's always hurt. So, they need Bateman. And I think Bateman would be the pick at 26, 27, 28 to the Saints if the corners are gone. I think that's when you can see, I think, this really coming true, where the Steelers would probably move back with the Packers.
And any of those trades, whether it's the Packers, the Bills, or the Saints, obviously they're 3 straight picks. Basically, the Steelers are looking at, a late 3rd round pick in return for that kind of trade. Is that worth it to you? Is a late 3rd round pick enough for the Steelers to take a chance on maybe not getting their first choice of the guys that would be on the board at 24 by moving back a half a dozen picks or so?
I think so. I think it would be moving back to 29, 28, 29, 30. There's no team that strikes me between the Steelers and either of those teams that's going to take Najee Harris if he's there. So let's just assume Najee Harris is there, and the targets we mentioned, Farley, Bateman, and ETN are the targets. Who's taken Najee Harris? No one. I mean, the Jaguars have bigger needs than Najee Harris, and they have James Robinson, so they don't need Najee Harris. There's no way that the Browns are going to take a running back.
Same with the Ravens.
The Ravens just took J.K. Dobbins. The Saints, if they're there, they don't need one. They have Kamara. Obviously, the Packers just took A.J. Dillon. And then the Bills maybe, but clearly they're more fascinated with the speed of ETN. So
yeah, and if you're trading with the Bills, especially, I mean, you're going to know who they're going to be coming up to get.
Yeah, the only threat you expose yourself to is a team like Atlanta, or potentially coming up from the bottom of the 2nd round and hopping you at one of those slots. But I mean, if one of the teams, aka, Green Bay or New Orleans, are looking to trade up, it makes me believe they're probably not going to move out of the
trade
spot.
Down. Now maybe the Browns would trade out of 26, or maybe Jacksonville would trade out of 25, possibly. The Ravens with 2 picks right there, seems to be trading down doesn't make a ton of sense for them. The last thing here on this kind of topic is I think in trading down in general, look, the Steelers have a ton of needs. So yeah, I think they're kind of focused on Najee Harris right now, but even if they trade down and say the Bills, they trade with the Bills to 30, the Bills take ETN with 24, and then somebody, trades with one of these teams and comes and nabs Harris. It's not like the Steelers not getting a running back in the 1st round is some sort of catastrophe for this draft. They need tackles, they need centers, they need corners. And I honestly think down at 30, there are some different players that seem to have a little bit better value for the pick that would be a different fit for the team by moving back a half a dozen spots. A guy like Asante Samuel, maybe, or a guy like a Liam Eichenberg, who maybe at 24 is a bit of a reach. That at 30, it seems like the teams would be a little bit more comfortable taking.
Also, I think that's obviously prime territory for maybe a center, Creed Humphrey, Dickerson. Also, I mean, hey, if they really want a running back, they could take Javonte Williams there if he's there. If they really want one of the top 3 backs, there's no harm in trading back 6 spots, getting an extra third, and then taking Javonte Williams. I mean, he's a good football
And then
player.
with that pick at the end of the third round, that gives them the ability to address another one of these pressing needs, whether that's, cornerback or, if we look at corner, tackle, center, running back, tight end as sort of these spots where edge, there are important starters or rotational players that are missing from this lineup. We named 6 spots. And so the ability to get another top 100 at 105, it'd be top 105 pick, I think would be really huge for this team. It allows them to really address one of those other needs. Say if a Pat Freiermuth falls to 55 or something like that, then they can take that pick and not have to feel like they have to hit all their needs as they come to them, because they do have those additional day 2 pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't even think we mentioned linebacker. So inside backer, they could take an inside backer, and they've shown plenty of interest in that. And I think that's actually what that extra third can do. That can open up your playbook to where you can go, running back, center, tackle, and then still get a corner, linebacker, whatever. If you really want to go all in on that running game strategy, the mandate that Rooney laid out, I think that also gives you the flexibility to still have 3 other picks in the top 150 to where you can say, well, we can address edge depth. We can address corner in the top 105, whatever, top 100. We can still get a linebacker, good value at 128, like a Dylan Moses, like a Derek Barnes, someone like that. We have this flexibility now. And I think that also opens up the door for tight end, obviously. Tight end's a future need, but it's also a depth need this year. And it feels like one where tight end's the one position this year where it feels like you want to take one earlier, but you feel like they're not going to be able to because they just have more pressing now needs, and you feel like they're going to wait till later. But with an extra pick there, 6 in the top 150, I think they have a very good chance to maybe take a tight end with one of those 6.
All right, let's hit the big news of the day. Teddy Bridgewater traded to Denver. How does that change what we talked about yesterday, shaking up the first 10 picks there, with obviously the Broncos sitting at number 9? They paid just a 6th round pick for Bridgewater, but of course this will change the Broncos' needs and potentially have some trickle down impact for the rest of the first round.
Yeah, and if they do not take a quarterback, and this Schefter did say didn't take him out of the quarterback, but I think it makes them less likely. And it makes them a perfect trade back candidate along with the Panthers. So if they trade back with like Washington, Chicago, even New England at 15, these are the 3 teams that really need a quarterback, right? If they trade back that far, they instantly become a big threat for Najee Harris. They have a need at running back. They do. It's just Melvin Gordon. They got rid of Phillip Lindsay. Royce Freeman hasn't done much. And clearly they've shown interest in running backs this year. I mean, they've scoured that. So my thought process is, and we've seen them do this before, where they trade back and go BPA. They just did it with the Steelers. They drafted Noah Fant. They didn't really that tight end that year. I mean, it was a need for them. It wasn't the number 1 need though for them, and they took the best player available. I feel like that could be a Najee Harris scenario where they trade back to 19 or 20, and Najee's the best player on the board. So I think that's definitely where it could affect them. And they could also take one of those linebackers like a JOK, a Zaven Collins, someone like that, who's a Steelers target, but could potentially go to the Broncos. Tackle as well, obviously Darisaw, one of those guys. So I think that they have a lot of overlap of needs with the Steelers. And if the Broncos trade back into that territory, I think they're a threat to snipe the Steelers.
Last thing before we wrap things up here on the Draft Day Eve edition of Draft Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live, we had your 7-round Steelers mock draft on the site at SteelersNow.com today. You had them going with Harris, but in the first round. But I kind of wanted to pick your brain about the later round picks a bit. At Quinn Miners, the center from Wisconsin Whitewater, going in the 2nd round, and Hamza I'm losing it. Nazaruddin in the 3rd round, a defensive back from Florida State. Those 2 are pretty interesting picks. I think Miners a bit higher than most people had, and a safety by position only, not exactly at the top of the Steelers' needs, but an interesting player that can fit into that kind of positionless defense mold we've talked about.
Yeah, exactly. Miners is a guy I've talked about it. He's not getting out of the second round. I can't see it. I can't see it. He's had a great process. Landon Dickerson is a bit risky, and I think a lot of teams might prefer Miners, especially after what he did at the Senior Bowl. He's really athletic. He moves very well. He's nasty. He can play guard and center. This is a guy that fills so many needs at center. And you look at who has picks at the end of the second round. The Steelers, the Dolphins, the Rams, the Chiefs. All these teams need center. Even the Packers could use a center, although Elton Jacobs might play there. But these are center needy teams. So I can't see how he gets out of the second round. I don't see it. So if the Steelers want Quinn Miners, and I think they want a starter, and obviously Adrian Clem ran the pro day drills for Miners, so I think they have clear interest in him. I think it's got to be at 55. He's not making it to 87 now. Obviously, they could wait to 87, take a Josh Myers, a Kendrick Green, someone along that line, but I thought Miners would give them a guaranteed starter at day one at center. And that's why I think that is their pick. Now, Nasir Dean's very interesting. We talked about him a little bit here when we kind of talked about those hybrids. I think he's a guy who's just unmatched in the class, maybe outside of JOK. He's a poor man's JOK that's kind of doing the reverse of what JOK did. So he's a safety, probably coming down more. He's a guy that has played free safety, strong safety, slot corner, edge rusher, and linebacker. So this is a guy that can do it all for you. He can man up tight ends, running backs, wide receivers in the slot. He can give you free safety reps. That's huge in my opinion. I don't think JOK can give you free safety reps, but I do think Hamza can. So that gives you freedom to move around Minka and Edmonds how you wish with Hamza there. He can be the dime backer or the slot cornerback. I would think he would be dime backer, and then I think you would kick Sutton inside, put Pierre on the boundary and dime. That's what I think would be the lineup with this pick. And I think he just gives you exactly what you need, can step in at a multitude of spots. If Edmonds gets hurt, you have a suitable backup now to him at strong safety. And this guy can be your starting base nickel overhang defender. So I think that's what Hamza brings, and I think he's perfect. We looked at what they've kind of drafted at safety in the past years, sparky athletes like Edmonds, Sean Davis, all those very sparky guys. And Nasir Dean, although he didn't test due to injury, he's a very sparky athlete, would have tested off the charts. So I think he's the perfect type of guy that the Steelers would look at.
Good stuff, Nick, as always. And I know you're going to be on another show tonight. You want to plug that?
Yeah, going to be on 412 with Chad and Eddie there. So we're going to have a big time around the channel talk there. It's going to be fun. Big time talk.
And then, of course, we'll have our big draft powwow tomorrow night here at Pittsburgh Sports Live. Make sure you're checking out all the content at SteelersNow.com. We've got a literal ton of stories just piling up on the site over the last 2 days. So make sure you check it out as the news is coming in hot and heavy as we are on the eve of the 2021 NFL Draft. Again, for Nick Farabaugh, I'm Alan Saunders. Thanks for watching Draft Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live, and thanks for watching this entire month of April as we've broken down the Steelers and their draft prospects for the 2021 NFL Draft.